Okay, good morning, students. Today we work on 5.3 in the syllabus. This part is about production cost and revenues. This part is about calculations to really determine what the profits of your business is, or the profit you make on each unit you produce. To calculate the profit, we already have talked about profits and normal profits and abnormal profits. But to calculate the profit, you take the total revenue minus the total cost of the business, and that will give you the profit of the business. Firstly, we will look at what total cost is. Now, just to explain total cost to you, in economics, we'd add the fixed costs and the variable costs to get the total cost of a business. Now, the total cost, as I have said, is the fixed cost. Now, this fixed cost is a cost that your business experiences monthly, and it don't change from month to month. It also doesn't matter if your business produce 0 goods or services or produce 100. That cost stay exactly the same. Where the variable cost, remember I've said fixed cost plus variable cost gives you your total cost. Where the variable cost is the cost that change as the output change. So for example, if you use electricity, the more you produce, the more electricity you will use. If you, for example, have a business that produces t-shirts, as I always use, and you use sewing machines or what, and if you iron the clothes, then all of that use electricity. So the more you produce, the more electricity you will use. It is not in the same ratio, but it is increasing as the output is increasing. Now on a graph we can explain it. It is also on your PowerPoint. You see here the output increase. Doesn't matter if the output is 0 or 100, the fixed costs stay exactly the same. Examples of fixed costs is for the rent you pay for your office or for your factory where you operate your business. That stays the same. Doesn't matter if you produce, as I've said, 0 products or 10 products or 100 products. It's also your insurance that you pay monthly. That is type of cost that stay the same. Okay, then your variable cost, as your output increased, your variable cost increase. You can see here, when your output was 0, you still have pay fixed costs, but there was no variable cost. Sometimes very little. But the more your output is, the more your variable costs get. Now you see the fixed cost, the orange part, plus the blue part, which is the variable cost, give you your total cost. And that is what we have talked about. So you can now explain to me in words what total cost is, and you can illustrate it on a graph. So if an examiner asks you to calculate the total cost, they will normally list a lot of costs. And then you must determine according to that what is fixed cost and what is variable cost. Then you add the fixed cost, you add the variable cost, and you get then your total cost. That's the only way they can test you. They can ask you to define fixed cost or define variable cost. Okay, then we also have the other is average cost. So we first look at all the costs, like the total cost and the average cost. Average cost you can just calculate if you have the total cost. So you take the total costs that you have and you divide it by the units that you have produced. And that gives you your average cost, or as it can be called, the cost per unit. So in that case, if you have the average cost and you also know what the units is that you have produced, you can easily calculate the average cost of a business. You will see if you go back to our previous chapters where we have talked about the market structures, you will see there is an average cost line in that. This is this average cost that we are talking about. And it has the U shape. If you go to that graph, you will see that is how you draw the average cost curve. Okay, then we will look at the revenues. The total revenue of a business. You calculate, this is very easy, like all these calculations. You take the selling price and you multiply it by the units sold. That gives you your total revenue for your business. Now you can see I have the total revenue here, and like that total cost, I have it here. You see, don't start at 0. Why? Because there's fixed costs involved, exactly like there. Okay, so this graph is also on the PowerPoint. So that's total revenue, which I've said is the selling price multiply the units. So if you look at the total revenue and you look at the total costs, there is a point where it intersects. That is the break-even point. That point means that at that point, if you produce here at that point, if your output is there, then you will not make any profits or any losses in your business. If your total revenue is more than your total cost, any point here, if you produce any point here, then you will make profits in your business because your total revenue is more than your total cost. Now the opposite is also true. Here you can see everything from this break-even point. So there the total cost is less than the total revenue, is more than the total revenue. The total cost is more than the total revenue, and that indicates that your business is making a loss at that point. So up to this point, you will make losses in your business. So if you produce any point from the break-even point, you will see your business will start to make profits. Okay, so now the next calculation will be your average revenue. You just take that total revenue, divide it by the units, and you get your revenue per unit, your average revenue. Now, if you look at that, you will also understand that the average revenue is actually equal to your price per unit. So, if you go to the graphs on the market structures, you will see there's an average revenue. In a perfect competitive market, look at that slides again, you will see that the average revenue and the price is on exactly the same line. So the average revenue is your revenue per unit, or which is equal to your price per unit. Okay, so now they ask the question, or the next part in the syllabus is that you discuss the cost and the revenue as the output changes. And that is just, if the output increase, what will happen to your total revenue and what will happen to your total cost. And that is what we have said. If you produce anywhere left before this Q1, then you will make losses because your total revenue will be less than your total cost. And the opposite is true. So the more your output is, the more will be your revenue. It is exactly the same for your total cost. The more your output, the more your total cost. And so that is important. It is also important that you understand why the total costs start at that point. So that is about the total cost and the revenue, why it change or how it change as the output increase of a business. Okay, the next part is to discuss the effect of changes in technology on the production. Now, there's positive effects and there's negative effects. Remember, students, if you get a question where they ask you to discuss the effects, you must always look at the positive and the negative, or at the advantages and disadvantages of implementing technology in the production process. Now, if we think about ideas, you can offer your ideas to your teacher, or you can think about ideas first before you look at the examples I have offered. This is obviously not the only examples. This is a few that I've come up with. So if you implement capital equipment and use it instead of labor, you will contribute to the unemployment rate in the country. That is first a problem that will occur, or what is negative. And it has lots of negative social effects that we will not discuss now, but we will discuss it when we do unemployment later on in Unit 6. Then training your workers to handle this new equipment will also be very expensive and time consuming. Okay, then another negative point is that sometimes your clients feel that, say for example, you go to MTC and you have this electronic box that you must pay your account on with. And some people would say, no, I don't like that. I rather want personal service, because if I have any question, I can then ask the person behind the counter. So in some cases, the personal touch is lost in certain businesses. Okay, then we can look at positive points of implementing technology. It is like you have said, if you use a lot of technology in your business, you become more capital intensive. Remember what capital intensive means, and labor intensive, that your production process is more handled by machinery and technology. Then it is a capital intensive business. If it's more, the production process is more handled by human labor, then it is labor intensive. So your process will change to become more capital intensive. The process will also be in a much simpler way produced. But what is negative about this, which you can also add to the previous part, that you can't produce lots of goods that have a variation on it, because then you must continuously change your, say, computer program to develop, or your software to develop something different. So the products that you will be produced in a simpler way, but it will be all very much the same. So I always use the example of the jersey that is knit. If it is knit by a machine, then it will look all the same. But if you do it yourself, you can put in something else to make all the jerseys that you produce an individual product. So firms can achieve easier economies of scale where the output increase and the average cost decrease, because working with machinery, they can produce, as we have said, they can produce at a much higher rate, they can work longer hours, so your output of your business can increase. And capital equipment cost a lot when you buy them, but over the long run, they are much cheaper than the cost you pay, the salaries you pay for your workers. So it is a cheaper way of producing if you make use of capital equipment. And as we already have said, when you make use of robots or technology, then like in the example I've used, they can carry much more and they will not complain if they carry. So say a ton of or very huge quantities of products. Then in the case of this robots, as we have said already, it also limits the errors that is normally applicable or appear when humans are taking or doing these jobs. Okay, so there are a lot of positive effects if you implement technology in your business. You can see here, we have said it's simpler, it lacks the variety can lack in the circumstances. You can achieve economies of scale. The speed at which you produce it is much higher. And then the last one, when I've talked about the robots that you can use them in dangerous places where you, for example, go down in an area where you don't want to send a person to look at what's going on, and where it is too dangerous for a person to observe the situation in an area like a mine. So for that, it is better to use equipment, technology as equipment in your business. Okay, the last part of this is homework. I've asked you to think of types of technology that you can implement if you start up your own business and why you will do that. So if you come up with ideas why you will implement technology, not only any other ideas than what we have offered, that will help you to have a much better answer in the exam.